欢迎收看美国国家电视台主播会客室，我是主持人林巧 Nicole Lam。今天非常荣幸邀请到美国音乐界著名钢琴家 Dr. Dmitry Rachmanov 来到节目现场。Hello, pleasure to have you here with us today. Would you like to greet the camera?
Greetings. It is my pleasure to be talking to you, and I look forward to judging the Golden Note competition this coming weekend.
And you are hailed as an incredible musician, and I look up to you personally. And you've played in venues worldwide, United States, Asia, and Europe. Could you tell us a little bit about how you first encountered music and how you've developed into the musician you are today?
Well, I was born and raised in Moscow, the heart of Russia, Soviet Union at that time. Music and culture were high, one of the priorities of that nation, and I grew up in a family that highly appreciated art and music. My father played classical guitar, and I picked up that instrument before I even remember myself. And gradually I was geared towards the piano, and soon I studied with one of the finest teachers, and I was able to enter the professional music school called Gnesin School, and then I was surrounded by talented people, and that gave me a lot of stimulus, and I got more and more involved and became more and more passionate from the early age. So I was drawn to it at first subconsciously, and eventually became a passionate musician.
It's very amazing how with the people around you and also passionate about music, then they kind of influence you and you become more motivated and you love music even more. And what did you do after you attended Gnesin's music school?
Well, it was a school where you study all subjects, academics, and music as your major. So you have lessons twice a week, you have music history, musicianship, theory. This is a type of school that also exists in China. I think, the middle school of Beijing Central Conservatory, Shanghai Conservatory, and other such schools came after the Russian example. So I was part of that, and that took me to my senior year of high school, at which point my mother and myself came to New York, to the United States. So the next chapter of my life was transplanted across the oceans into America.
How did you feel about going from your childhood place, which was the center of Russia, Moscow, and then you had to move all the way to New York? Did you feel that it was totally different from what you were used to, or did you love it immediately?
Well, I originally had mixed feelings. I got so attached to the environment and to the great musicians that I was able to listen to all these great concerts that were available, and lots of friends I've had formed. Being a student for so many years, suddenly I had to part with that. Of course, I was very nostalgic and sad about it, but at the same time, I was very curious and ready to explore new experiences. And so when I finally arrived in New York, I was mesmerized and very impressed with what I saw. Grand structures of Manhattan, and people I started meeting, and it became very international for me. When I was in Russia, I spoke only the Russian language. Here I suddenly had to learn English. It was a total immersion course for me. It took some effort, but eventually I was glad that I was able to balance different experiences, different schools, and become, I guess, enriched by that experience.
Did you receive your college education in Manhattan, New York?
I did. I met my new teacher. Her name was Nadia Reisenberg. She was also of Russian roots from St. Petersburg Conservatory, studied with some great teachers at the time, and was a very well-known figure in performance and in teaching. So I was able to connect or reconnect to the Russian tradition already in New York. I played for her. I at first entered Mannes College of Music to study with her, but after a couple of years I transferred to the Juilliard School, where she also taught. And I graduated with my Bachelor of Music and Master of Music degrees. And then finally I enrolled in Manhattan School of Music for my doctorate, where I studied with Arkady Aronov, another teacher educated in St. Petersburg, Leningrad.
And it's very important to do what you love. I guess that's very important in career choice.
Absolutely. I think we consider ourselves lucky to do professionally what we really love and what fills our lives to the brim. It becomes our emotional, intellectual, rigorous experience, and multifaceted too, because you pursue your performing and recording, and also you do some research, you write things, and of course teaching plays a very large part of it. So it becomes a very enriching and multifaceted experience.
Yeah, like you said, with performing, what are some recent performances that you've done in the recent couple of months?
Well, we always have to combine different things, so performing and teaching and adjudicating as well. One of my recent performances was a lecture recital that I gave just a couple of days ago at the Music Teachers Association of California convention. And there I stayed for a few days. It was a cross-pollinating experience, because I was able to attend concerts and lectures as well as give my own. Prior to that, I had a recital in Paris, the capital of France, and I performed there at this magnificent venue, the American Church in Paris, which is a great Gothic type of cathedral with wonderful acoustics and old Steinway Grand.
Oh, wow.
So it was a wonderful experience. And then prior to that, I was in Toronto judging and teaching at a festival. And that all happened within the last few weeks.
I find it incredible. How do you manage to judge and perform and teach and lecture all at the same time?
And travel too.
And travel too, yes.
Which is exciting.
It's very exciting.
Well, you just have to squeeze in more than you would otherwise. You just have to wake up an hour earlier and go to bed an hour late, and then there you go.
Wow, that's very impressive.
I'm just joking, but of course, you know, it takes a lot. You just have to just split your brain, I guess, multitasking. I think that's what musicians do, and I think that helps develop your skills. So music is not just for those who want to become professional. So I think music should be a part of a child and adolescent's education, because it really is part of a well-rounded development of a young person. You know, it has to go alongside with other disciplines, of course, but we should not underestimate the importance of music. It develops you emotionally as well as in terms of the function of your brain, as well as practical skills. You know, you have to, I'm not a psychologist, but there are a lot of things that being developed as you learn your music and the skills related to music.
I think music brings a lot of important qualities as developing into like a musician or any type of career. It just brings so many important human qualities that everyone should possess. And it's very great to have music in all of our lives nowadays. It's very important. Yeah.
And they say that music and mathematics go together.
Yes.
There is part of the brain that develops both skills and helps developing both. Emotional part is very important. It enriches you tremendously, and you know, when you learn your skills and then able to be in front of people and express your music through performance. And there are so many great compositions by so many genius composers throughout centuries and throughout nationalities, that it inevitably enriches you because you have to be not only just a performer but a recreator. So you have to feel and breathe and think of what you're doing, and that certainly develops you. You become a performer, and you're able to channel things through your heart, your mind, your brain, and that's very important.
I think it's like part of that is also teaching, which is I admire a lot because I think teachers change the world daily. And as a teacher, you're spreading that kind of music and that kind of passion to kids and students around you. So what do you think, well, how do you feel when you see other students pursuing music and playing music?
Well, as a teacher, you share your experiences with the young people that are entrusted in your care. And of course, you have to give as much as you can, but you also have to be a psychologist in a way, because every student is different and has different sets of skills and different personalities. So with one student, you have to go fast and challenge and push. Another pupil, you have to be more careful and go slower, and also be gentle with an emotional content of a student. You don't want to harm anyone. You don't want to be too inflexible or too harsh. And there are, of course, technical elements as pertaining to performance, because you have to be able to express what you have, but first you have to learn the skills, and there are so many different challenges in that. You know, technical skills, rhythm, digital facility. It could be chords, it could be octaves, it could be passages, it could be polyphony, and the range of sound. So you have to take everything into consideration when you teach. There's no end to it.
It's so challenging to take care of each individual note and its tone and its touch, and you have to think about all these things as a teacher and as a student, as a performer. I feel like it's every part of music. It's every single detail counts into a piece and a piece of repertoire.
So it's like a big jigsaw puzzle, that you really have to know how to do it in order to inspire a student and not turn a student away.
That is amazing. Do you have any specific like repertoire? Because I know you are from Moscow. So do you especially prefer Russian music, or is that like your area of expertise?
Well, as a performer, I may be drawn to certain styles and certain composers that may be something that I can do better than others. But as a teacher, you have to be very versatile because you have to develop a student by giving them all kinds of styles, from the Baroque to classical to romantic to impressionist to modern, and also from large-scale pieces like sonatas and concertos to smaller ones like little preludes or etudes and so on. So, so it depends, of course. So I draw the line between being a teacher, where I have to explore all kinds of repertoire, and being a performer. And as a performer, I may explore a certain repertoire for a certain period of time, and then I may switch to other styles. I may explore the music of Scriabin or Rachmaninoff or other Russian composers, but I also like to perform Beethoven and Chopin and Schumann. It just depends on what I am working on at a moment and what am I drawn to, what I feel specifically excited about, and what I want to share with the audience.
Do you associate like specific feelings or with different composers? Do you associate like different type of, or your approach towards the piece?
Certainly. You know, as performers, we have to adopt and adapt our skills. We cannot play Bach the same way we play Chopin.
Exactly.
We have to be very sensitive to the style and to the touch. You know, Bach, for example, was a great master who composed in a very, very developed polyphonic style. As far as the touch and sound, Bach worked with performing and certain styles and orchestras and different instruments, such as organ, for example, or harpsichord or clavichord. And some instruments require a totally different touch because you could not, for example, use pedal or abuse using pedal, or you couldn't do a lot of sentimental type of phrasing or big crescendos and diminuendos. The instruments didn't allow that. And so you have to develop that articulation which you can hear different voices at the same time. Whereas if you play Chopin, you have to have a singing tone, you have to use a lot of pedal, different terms of rubato, flexible timing, and flexible dynamics. And so it's a completely different perspective, you have to be a different musician to play different composers.
And you have to switch that type of perspective in like a matter of minutes because you're playing different pieces per like, how do you get yourself into that kind of mindset during like a specific program?
Well, you train yourself, of course. You have your instincts, but you have to trust and you have to test your instincts by performing, by working on a certain style, certain piece, by performing it a few times, maybe by recording yourself, by having colleagues who would lend their ears and you could run certain pieces. So you would test yourself in the music and the style of Chopin or Schumann, quintessential romantic, German romantic composer. And then you can try yourself by preparing a Beethoven sonata. And when you perform a recital, you have to switch from one style to another. That's one of the skills that we have to learn. Right. That's a test, you know. If you play different different styles and different composers, you have to be able to switch immediately. Otherwise, you will be playing Chopin like Bach, or playing Bach like Beethoven. That wouldn't work.
No, it wouldn't. Yeah. And I know you've also performed all around Asia and China. Could you share with us a little bit about your experience in like Beijing Conservatory or Shanghai Conservatory?
I have toured China a number of times, and I've seen different parts of China and different aspects. And for example, my last tour was about a year ago, where I first was in the north, and then I visited other parts, such as the south, and the culture is very different in each part of China. So it's very exciting, and I see that in China there are a lot of people who are very excited about learning piano and learning the skills, and that's what happened maybe in Russia at the turn of the 20th century is now happening in China. So there is a trend, because Russia also was new. The music was relatively new at the beginning. It was a young musical culture that developed tremendously, you know, with the turn of the 20th century, Scriabin, Rachmaninoff, and before that Tchaikovsky, of course, and Mussorgsky, and many others. And so in a matter of very quick turnaround, suddenly Russia became a major musical culture, and great performers and great traditions. And the same thing is happening in China at the moment.
The culture plays a huge part in this. I know not only have you performed and taught and lectured, you've also judged around the world, including most recently the Golden Note Music Festival. And I know that US TV is also collaborating with the Golden Note Youth Music Festival.
Yes, I'm very excited about being part of the Golden Note Music Festival, because it stimulates students and teachers as well, how to prepare the students, how to make them work harder, and how to make them being able to express what they can in the form of a competition. But I want to stress that competitions are not just the means in themselves. It's just the ability, and it gives you a stimulus, it gives you an incentive to work. It absolutely doesn't mean that you are worse or inferior if you don't win. It's a bit of a lottery. We have to admit that competition is, we're not competing because we want to win necessarily. We want to compete because we want to do our very best, and that pushes us to work harder.
And I wanted to end this with, do you have any advice for any aspiring musicians or young musicians nowadays?
Well, I think that it's important to study music and love it, and do it for fun and for love, and be serious at the same time. But do it because it enriches you as a human being and as a cultural ambassador, to be able to learn the skills that will always be part of you for the rest of your life.
It's been a pleasure to have you here with us at US National TV today, and it's been amazing how you've shared so much wisdom with all musicians and anyone here today. And it's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be with you.
非常感激 Dr. Dmitry Rachmanov 来到美国国家电视台接受专访，和我们分享那么多宝贵的音乐经验。也谢谢各位观众的收看，我们下期主播会客室再见。